Go on, Grandma, Evelyn said, her whine catching the candlelight. Tell us again how you used to run the store, before things changed. Forks scraped porcelain. Laughter rolled like wind through broken glass. And I, old Helen Price, just sat there, hands folded, smile steady. Because a woman who's been underestimated her whole life learns how to turn silence into a sermon. The roast on the table was perfect. Garlic crisped on the edges, rosemary still warm from the oven. Everything in that room looked civilized. Linen napkins, fine silver, smiles like Sunday. But the air smelled of mockery, the kind of quiet cruelty that hides behind etiquette. Mark, my son-in-law, leaned back in my late husband's chair and said, "Don't take it personal, Helen. We're just trying to help you simplify. You've had a long run, but it's time to let the next generation handle things." My daughter Denise nodded, pretending kindness. "Mom, you shouldn't have to worry about money or property anymore. We can take care of it. All of it. All of it." That's what this dinner was about. Not family, not love, ownership. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just turned my wedding ring around my finger like a slow prayer. "You talking about my property?" I asked softly. Mark chuckled. "Technically, it's ours now. The refinancing last year, remember? You signed the papers." The chandelier hummed overhead. Even the lights knew a lie when they heard it. The spoon in my hand trembled once, then stilled. "I signed copies, baby, not the originals." Denise froze. "What?" Mark's laugh cracked, thin and nervous. "She's confused." "No," I said, calm as gospel. "You're the one who's confused. I may be 72, but I still know the difference between a signature and a forgery." The room went cold. Even the roast stopped steaming. See, a year ago they'd told me about helping with the taxes. Mark came with a laptop, Denise with a fake smile. They'd slid forms across my kitchen table. Same table we were eating at now. I'd signed what I thought was refinancing paperwork, but something in my gut had twisted that night. So I made a call. To him. Mr. Caldwell, my lawyer for 37 years. The man who handled my husband's estate, my business closure, even my will. He told me, "Helen, never sign what you can't smell truth on." And I didn't. I printed blanks, let them keep their copies, and handed him the real ones. So tonight, when the laughter got too loud, I said, "Mr. Caldwell, baby, would you bring it out?" Chairs creaked, heads turned. He stepped from the hallway like judgment itself, suit pressed sharp, silver hair gleaming. "Evening, Ms. Price." "Evening," I said. "You brought the folder?" He lifted it, slim and dangerous. "Always do." Denise swallowed. "Mom, what is this?" "The truth," I said. "Bound in legal paper." Caldwell laid the folder on the table like a gavel. "I believe this concerns fraudulent transfer attempts on Ms. Price's deed," he said smoothly. "Filed under false witness, signature forgery, and theft by deception." Mark's wine glass slipped, shattered across the floor. Denise whispered, "This can't be real." "Oh, it's real, baby," I said, voice low and holy. "You just thought I wouldn't notice the wolves I raised." Caldwell opened the folder. "Per state law, this property remains fully and solely in Ms. Price's name. Additionally, the joint account withdrawals you authorized have been reversed. The bank has already frozen your access." Mark jumped up. "You can't do that." "I didn't," I said, smiling. "The law did." Silence wrapped the table like smoke. Only the ticking clock dared move. "See, children," I said softly, "I might be old, but I ain't blind. You mocked the woman who fed you, clothed you, built you. But when you bite the hand that raised you, don't be surprised when it signs your eviction." Denise's lips trembled. "Mom." I stood slow and steady. "My husband bought this house with sweat. I kept it with prayer. You thought I'd lose it with fear? No, baby. Fear's the one thing I gave up when your daddy went to glory." I nodded to Caldwell. "Go on, read the last line." He cleared his throat. Effective immediately, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas have no legal residence rights on this property. Sheriff's notice has been served. The candles flickered like applause. Mark whispered, "You called the sheriff?" I looked him dead in the eye. "No, sugar. He's waiting on the porch." For a long time, nobody spoke, not even the ghosts in the wallpaper. Denise's eyes filled, tears glimmering against guilt. Mark's jaw locked, but his arrogance had already packed its bags. I turned toward the window where the sunset was dyeing pink over the magnolia trees. "You mocked the old woman," I said, voice trembling with power. "But the old woman wrote the ending." The front door creaked open. Bootsteps, 2 deputies in uniform. "Evening, Miss Price," one said. "Everything ready?" "Yes, baby," I said softly. "Everything's ready." Denise tried to speak, but her words broke into sobs. Mark just stared at me, lost, and I, the old woman they mocked, straightened my spine like an oak tree that had weathered every storm. As they were led out, I whispered to myself, "Kindness ain't weakness, it's just quiet until it strikes." Caldwell closed the folder, nodded once, and said, "Justice served." The house exhaled, warm again, peaceful. I poured myself a glass of water, the ice clinking like victory bells. Outside, the sheriff's car lights faded down the drive. Inside, the roast was still hot. I smiled and sat back down at the head of my table. Dinner was finally mine again. The moment the door shut behind them, the house sighed like a burden lifted off its bones. It was the first time in 2 years my walls had heard peace instead of pretending. Mr. Caldwell gathered his papers, adjusting his tie. "You did good tonight, Miss Price." I smiled, slow. I just did what every mother should do. Remember who she was before they made her small? He chuckled, tucking the folder into his briefcase. "You know, most people your age would have folded, signed it all away." "Most people ain't buried as much as I have," I said softly. "Grief teaches you arithmetic, how to count what's worth keeping." He nodded, touched the brim of his hat, and left me alone with my ghosts. The grandfather clock ticked like an old heartbeat. I sat there staring at the empty chairs, each one holding a memory. That one at the corner? My late husband, Frank. He'd built that chair by hand, oak legs thick enough to carry generations. He used to say, "Helen, you feed people twice, once with food and once with love." And Lord, I'd fed them both. Denise's baby pictures still hung on the wall, smiling wide, back when she thought her mama was magic. But love, when twisted by greed, starts sounding like pity. The next morning, the church bells called out like forgiveness. But I didn't go. I made coffee, black and strong, and sat by the window watching my magnolia tree bloom. Funny thing about that tree, it only blossoms after the coldest winters, and it never apologizes for surviving. At noon, my neighbor Mavis knocked. She had gossip in her eyes before she even opened her mouth. "Lord, Helen," she said, waving her phone. "You on Facebook? Somebody filmed the sheriff carrying your son-in-law's boxes out. It's got, let me see." She squinted. 32,000 views already. I sighed. That internet sure don't waste time. "They calling you Justice Grandma," she said, nearly hollering. "Look at these comments. She snapped like scripture, and I hope my grandma got that kind of fire." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because pain finally got me trending. When Mavis left, I scrolled the video myself, and there I was, standing in my doorway, face calm, voice steady as judgment. The comments scrolled faster than my tears. "This woman's my hero. Protect your peace, Queen." That line, "Kindness ain't weakness," gave me chills. I closed my phone. They didn't know it, but that line wasn't new. It was the same one my mama whispered the night my father walked out. "Don't let pain make you hard, Helen. Just sharper." Later that week, Denise called. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity's a stubborn friend. "Mom?" Her voice cracked like a child's. I didn't mean for it to go that far." I didn't speak right away. let the silence weigh on her like the truth she'd run from. "Baby," I said finally, "you meant for it to go far enough till it paid off." "I was scared," she said. "Mark said you'd forget, that you wouldn't notice." He said, "Stop," I said, calm but firm. "Every devil starts with 'he said,' but you had a choice, Denise, and you chose comfort over character." She sniffled. "Can we just talk, please? Maybe come by?" "Maybe," I said, "when you can face me without rehearsing your apology." And I hung up. That night I made myself dinner: fried okra, cornbread, sweet tea. The kind of meal that don't ask you to explain your loneliness. The radio hummed an old Mahalia Jackson song. I hummed along, my voice low, cracked, but alive. And for the first time in a long while, I realized peace don't sound like laughter. It sounds like not caring who laughs anymore. 3 days later, a letter came. No return address, just my name written in Denise's nervous handwriting. Inside was a check for $12,000, repayment for the borrowed money she'd taken from my savings. No note, just a number that said, "I remember." I folded it, tucked it inside my Bible between Psalm 37 and Proverbs 31. Because forgiveness ain't forgetting, it's filing pain under lessons learned. Weeks passed, the house felt lighter. Neighbors came by with pies, hugs, stories about how they always knew I was the strong one. Funny thing is, nobody says that till they see your fire burn bright. But I didn't mind. People come to the flame for warmth or spectacle. You just gotta know which one they are. Then came the news segment. "Local woman outsmarts family in property scheme," the anchor said. They played the same clip, the sheriff, the folder, my face like quiet thunder, and the host said, "Viewers online call her Aunt Helen the matriarch who turned betrayal into justice." I chuckled. "Well," I whispered, "if the shoe fits." By the time the video hit 1 million views, I'd stopped counting. But one comment stayed pinned at the top. "She didn't lose her family. She just found herself." That one, I printed, framed it, put it right next to my wedding photo, because even widows deserve reminders that endings can be beautiful too. But then, one evening, another envelope came, from a law firm I didn't recognize. I slid it open with my old letter knife, my heartbeat slow but steady, and there it was. Estate of Frank Price, new claim of undisclosed assets. I read it twice, then once more. Frank's estate, my late husband. He'd left something else, something they never told me, the kind of secret that don't stay buried without a fight. I smiled. "Well now," I said to the empty room, "looks like the story ain't done yet." The envelope sat on my lap like it had a pulse. Frank Price, my late husband, had been gone 11 years, buried on a hill with a flag, a folded uniform, and promises I thought were settled. But the law doesn't send you mail unless something wants to rise from the dirt. I laid that letter on the kitchen table, same one where he used to drink his morning coffee, black as his humor. The light caught my wedding ring, and I whispered, "Frank, what did you leave behind this time?" By afternoon, I was sitting in Caldwell's office downtown. The place still smelled like lemon polish and expensive paper. He adjusted his glasses, sliding the envelope toward me. "Ms. Price," he said, "this came from a firm in Atlanta. Apparently your husband owned shares in a construction company. Small back then, but it's grown." "Grown?" "Yes, ma'am, to the tune of about 8 figures. I stared at him, blinking once. "You mean to tell me my Frank, who used to fix pipes with duct tape, left me a company?" Caldwell smiled. "Technically, part of one. His partner died recently, and the surviving documents triggered a release clause." I leaned back, breath caught between shock and déjà vu, because just when I thought my story had closed, God had flipped another page. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked the halls of my quiet house, touching the walls like I was memorizing them all over again. Every nail, every creak felt alive with something new. My husband's old ledger was still on the shelf, pages of numbers, names, sketches of blueprints I'd never understood. and tucked inside was a note in his handwriting, faded but clear. "If you're reading this, Helen, it means you outlived me. Again. The business ain't dead. It's waiting for you to tell it what to be." I pressed that note to my heart, and for the first time since the funeral, I felt him sitting beside me again, steady, quiet, smiling that half-crooked smile that said, "You'll handle it, woman, you always do." By morning, I was in a gray sedan headed for Atlanta. The city buzzed like ambition. Horns, glass towers, voices rushing through the air. I hadn't been there in years, not since Frank's first heart attack. At the law office, a young associate led me into a conference room so big it could hold every Sunday potluck I'd ever hosted. 2 men in suits waited. One introduced himself as Mr. Larkin, the executor of the estate. "Mrs. Price," he said, "your husband's partner left no heirs. That means his portion reverts to you under their joint clause. You are now the majority owner of Price & Mason Construction." I blinked. "Owner?" "Yes, ma'am. Which means you inherit not only the assets, but also the pending projects, bank accounts, and—" He hesitated. "A lawsuit." I smiled faintly. "Always a catch, ain't there?" He slid another folder across the table. The plaintiff's name was one I knew all too well. Mark Thomas, my son-in-law, filed 3 weeks ago. Claim, unlawful interference with inheritance and emotional distress. My lips curved slow, cold. So he wanted revenge. And the Lord decided to make it poetic. When I got home, the first thing I did was pull out my old Bible, flip to Psalm 37. "Fret not thyself because of evildoers." I smiled. I ain't frettin', I'm planning. Because if there's one thing folks never expect, it's that an old woman can play the long game. 2 days later, Caldwell came by again. "Mark's lawyer's already making noise," he said. "They think you used influence to force them out." "Influence?" I laughed. "If influence means finally telling the truth, then yes, I'm guilty as charged." He smirked. "Well, they're requesting mediation. You can settle or fight." "Fight," I said without blinking. "If he wants to turn dinner tables into court tables, then so be it. Let's set it." Court day came hot and heavy, August sunlight thick enough to choke you. I wore my Sunday best, navy suit, pearl earrings, and faith-like armor. Mark showed up in a cheap tie and arrogance. Denise sat behind him, eyes red, but she didn't look at me, not once. When the judge entered, everyone rose, but when he said my name, even the stenographer paused. Because I didn't sound like no victim, I sounded like a verdict. The lawyer tried to rattle me. "Mrs. Price," he said, "isn't it true you used emotional coercion to have your son-in-law and daughter removed from your property?" I tilted my head. "Emotional coercion? Honey, all I did was read the fine print. You might try it sometime." A few folks in the back snickered. Even the judge smirked behind his glasses. Then Caldwell stood. "Your Honor, may I?" He handed over documents, the same ones from that dinner night, plus bank records, voice recordings, everything tied neat as a sermon bow. When he finished, the courtroom was silent. You could hear paper breathing. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Thomas, would you like to respond?" Mark swallowed, opened his mouth, closed it again. Denise covered her face, and I, old Helen Price, just sat there, hands folded like I was back at church, waiting on the choir's final note. "Case dismissed," the judge said. "And Mrs. Price, if I may, my own mama watches that video of yours. Said you remind her not to let people write her out of her story." The whole room laughed. I just smiled. "Tell her the sermon's free, baby, but the lesson cost me years." Outside, the reporters were already waiting. Microphones, cameras, flashes like fireworks. "Mrs. Price, do you have a statement?" I looked straight into that lens and said, "Family might betray you, but faith don't. And justice always shows up on time." That clip hit 10 million views before sundown, but all I cared about was the quiet afterward, the sound of peace walking me home again. That night, I poured 1 glass of sweet tea for myself, 1 for Frank's photo. "Guess we back in business," I said softly. The picture didn't move, but I swear, his smile deepened, and for the first time in a long time, I laughed. Not the kind that hides pain, the kind that sounds like closure. That night, thunder cracked over Magnolia County like God himself was testifying. The rain beat my windows till it sounded like applause, and I sat at my table, the one that started it all, staring at that folder from Caldwell. The deed, the court dismissal, the company papers, all mine. Every paper on that wood was soaked in lessons. Trust no smile that comes before a signature. Never hand over your name unless you know who's holding the pen. By morning, the sun broke clean, the news truck was gone, and peace, real, earned peace, finally came walking through my door. Until the phone rang, unknown number again. I almost let it die, but something said, "Pick it up, old girl." "Mrs. Price?" The voice was young, polite. "My name's Jeremy Mason. My father was your husband's partner." I froze. "Mason? As in Price and Mason Construction?" "Yes, ma'am. I found some of Dad's old ledgers, letters between him and your husband. There's something you need to see." The line hummed. A chill ran down my spine. "Where are you, son?" I asked. "Birmingham," he said. "If you're willing, I can drive out this weekend. I think Mr. Price meant for you to have this." 2 days later, he came. Tall, brown-skinned, wearing his daddy's same stubborn eyes. He held a weathered briefcase, leather cracked, corners burnt from age. "This was my father's," he said. "He kept it locked, said if anything ever happened to him, it was meant for Frank's wife." He set it on my table, the same table that had seen betrayal, justice, and now, revelation. When I flipped the latch, the smell of dust and old ink hit me. Memories buried in paper. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Frank's handwriting, steady, strong, each one dated, each one ending the same way, for Helen. Always. My throat tightened. Jeremy sat quiet, respectful as I opened the first. "Helen, if you're reading this, then the business outgrew both our hands. Mason's been offered government contracts, big ones. But I told him I don't do deals that bury the small folks. If they want to cheat, let them. We'll keep our name clean. If this company ever grows without our hearts, walk away. But don't let them use our name to break the poor man's back." I wiped a tear before it fell. That was my Frank, rough edges, holy backbone. The second letter stopped me cold. "If anything happens to me sudden, check account 4129 at Magnolia State Bank. I set aside a fund for the workers, men who broke their backs for pennies but kept my dream alive. Don't let anyone steal it, not even family." My chest burned. A secret fund, untouched, for a decade. Jeremy leaned forward. "We ran the records. The account still exists. The money's there, plus interest." "How much?" He looked down, then up. "A little over. $1.3 million. I sat back, eyes closed, whispering, "Lord, you never forget a good man's work." Jeremy smiled. "He must have trusted you to finish what he started." "Oh, baby," I said softly. "I ain't just going to finish it. I'm going to multiply it." Within a week, I met Caldwell again. We reopened the fund under a new name, the Price Mason Foundation, for widows, veterans, and small-town builders. "Use this money," I told him, "to rebuild what greed tried to tear down." He nodded. "That's quite a legacy." I smiled. "It ain't legacy, baby. It's repayment." When the news broke, the same anchors who once called me Justice Grandma now called me the Magnolia Matriarch. Viewers flooded the comments again. "She didn't just win, she healed. Protect this woman at all costs. Grandma Helen built her own economy." But none of that mattered. Not the cameras, not the fame. What mattered was the day a construction worker named Lenny came to my porch, hat in hand, tears in his beard. "Ma'am," he said, "my daddy worked for your husband. Died on that site. You just paid off my mama's mortgage." And I, Me, the woman they mocked at dinner, just hugged him and whispered, "That's Frank paying his dues from heaven." One quiet night, I sat on my porch, gospel radio low, magnolia blossoms glowing in the moonlight. The air smelled of rain and second chances. I whispered, "We did it, baby. We turned betrayal into a foundation." The wind picked up, soft and steady, rustling through the leaves like applause. And I laughed, a laugh so full it shook the ghosts clean out of the house. The news vans finally stopped coming, but the letters never did. Every morning, a new envelope sat on my porch, handwritten, stamped, sometimes tear-stained. Some came from women my age, others from girls half my granddaughters. They all started the same. Dear Aunt Helen. Some wrote about betrayal. Some wrote about survival. All of them wrote like I once prayed, quiet, trembling, hoping somebody was listening. By autumn, the Price Mason Foundation had built its first 3 homes, one for a widow, one for a veteran, one for a young couple rebuilding after a fire. The local paper called it the Miracle of Magnolia Street. But I didn't call it a miracle. I called it balance, because every hurt deserves a healing, every wrong deserves a rewrite. Still, there were nights I sat on that porch, staring at the empty rocking chair beside me, Frank's chair. The wood had gone gray with time, but the seat still dipped where he used to rest his weight. "Lord," I whispered one night, "you gave me justice, but you took my peace with it." The wind rustled the magnolias, soft but sure, like an answer. Peace ain't given, baby. Peace is built. Then came the call that changed everything again. It was from Judge Randall, the same one who dismissed Mark's case. "Mrs. Price," he said, "I don't normally do this, but would you consider speaking at the county courthouse? We're starting a mentorship program for women learning business law. You're an example of standing up for yourself, with grace." I laughed. "Baby, I ain't no lawyer." He said, "You don't have to be. You're a teacher." 2 weeks later, I stood at that courthouse podium, staring at a sea of young faces. Some nervous, some angry, some hopeful. The air smelled like ink and possibility. I said, "You can't let folks sign your silence, baby. Not your sons, not your husbands, not even your own fears. They can take your money, your time, your house, but don't you dare let them take your name." The room went still. Every word hit like thunder rolling down marble halls. I ended with the same line that started my second chance. "Kindness ain't weakness, it's just quiet until it strikes." And the applause that followed? That was the sound of women learning they could roar. Afterward, a young woman waited by the door. Dark skin, bright eyes, nervous hands clutching a notebook. "Miss Helen," she said softly, "I've been watching your videos. My mama called me lazy for dreaming about business, but I just registered my own cleaning company today, named it Still Standing Services." Tears burned my eyes. "Still Standing," I whispered. "That's the best name I ever heard." I hugged her tight, the way I used to hold Denise when the world felt too big, and in that moment I realized maybe God gave me other daughters to raise now. That night, I drove back home under a gold sky, stopped by the cemetery on the hill. Frank's headstone glowed in the sunset, simple and clean. Franklin Price, builder, believer, husband. I brushed the leaves away and said, "You left me work, baby. Not just money, work, and I'm still doing it." The wind blew warm through the trees. I swear I heard him say, "That's my girl." Then the phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You think this is over? You embarrassed me on national TV. You'll regret it." Mark. The screen lit my face in the dark. For a moment, anger flared like lightning. Then I smiled. Slow, calm, deliberate. Because when a man like that threatens peace, he's already lost it. I typed back 3 words. "Already forgave you." Then blocked his number. Simple, clean, holy. The next morning, the local radio played a segment called Aunt Helen's House. A caller said, "That old lady gives me hope. She reminds me to get up, no matter who sat me down." The host laughed. "Well, if she's listening. Aunt Helen, you got the whole South rooting for you." I smiled into my tea. "Baby, the South always roots for the strong ones. They just don't expect them to be 70 and female." That night, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done since Frank died. I was mocked, robbed, and lied to. But I wasn't broken. I was sharpened. Justice wasn't the ending. It was the rebirth. And if they ever doubt me again, I'll just show them the foundation I built on the ashes they left behind. The porch light flickered as the crickets sang, and I thought to myself, if this was a movie, the credits would roll right here. But my life ain't a movie. It's a sermon still being written. The crickets sang louder that night, as if they knew a storm was coming that didn't need thunder to be heard. I rocked on my porch, the glow of the lamplight brushing against the magnolia leaves, when I saw it, headlights crawling up my drive. My body tensed before my mind did. That car moved too slow to be a stranger and too bold to be a friend. It stopped at the edge of the gravel. Engine humming. Door opened. Mark stepped out. He wasn't the same man from the courtroom. His eyes had gone hollow, his hair uncombed, pride leaking out of him like bad fuel. But arrogance, oh, that dies slow. "You really think you won, don't you?" he said, walking up the steps like the porch still belonged to him. I didn't move, didn't flinch. I just looked at him, the way my mama used to look at drunks trying to argue with the preacher. "Baby," I said softly, "you don't win against truth. You just tire yourself out fighting it." He sneered. "You ruined my life, my business, my marriage. You made me a joke." I shook my head. "You did that yourself. I just turned on the light so you could see it." His jaw tightened. "I want what's mine." "And what's that?" "This house, the company, I raised my hand. He stopped. Even the night air went still. "Boy," I said, slow and clear, "if you ever talk about this house again like it owes you something, I'll let the Lord handle you. And he don't take requests. He takes reckonings." He took a step back, eyes darting toward the dark. "You think this is over, old woman. You can't scare me with church talk." I smiled, quiet, calm, almost pitying. "Church talk? No, baby, that's life talk. You're just too scared to understand it." He started to speak again, but that's when I heard the sound, the click of a camera. From the shadows near the driveway, Jeremy Mason stepped out. "Got everything," he said, phone raised. "Audio, video, all of it. You just violated your restraining order." Mark's face turned ghost white. "Restraining? What?" Caldwell's voice came from behind him. "Filed it yesterday. You might want to read your mail before you go threatening folk." Mark backed up, muttering curses that melted into the night. He stumbled into his car, slammed the door, and peeled off down the road like guilt on wheels. When the sound finally faded, I exhaled. Jeremy lowered his phone. "You okay, ma'am?" I nodded, slow. "Yeah, just hate seeing a fool waste a second chance." Caldwell smiled. "You handled that. Better than any lawyer could." "Didn't need to be a lawyer," I said. "Just had to remember who I was before they told me who to be." The porch light flickered. Rain started again, gentle this time, like an old hymn. Jeremy said softly, "You know, my father used to say a good builder don't fear the storm. He respects it. You're a good builder, Mrs. Price." I looked out toward the road where Mark's taillights had disappeared. Maybe. But I'm done building walls. I'm building doors now, ones that only open for peace. The next morning, I woke up early, made cornbread, turned on the radio, and there it was. My voice on the morning show, again. A replay of my courthouse speech. They mocked the old woman till she made the law her choir. The host laughed. "That's Aunt Helen again, folks, the matriarch who turned betrayal into a blueprint." I sat back in my chair and whispered, "Blueprints can fade, baby, but the foundation don't." Later that afternoon, Denise showed up unannounced. No cameras, no Mark, just her, and 2 trembling hands holding a pie tin. "I made pecan," she said quietly. "Your favorite." I stared for a long moment, not at the pie, but at her eyes. This time, they looked like the little girl who used to chase fireflies in the yard. "Come in," I said finally. She did. We sat in silence a while. Then she said, "I left him." I nodded. "Good. I want to make things right, Mama." I looked at her, saw sincerity flickering like the first candle of Advent. Small, fragile, but real. "Then start by learning what right means," I said. "And if you can't find it, ask yourself who gets hurt when you choose wrong." Tears slid down her face. I passed her a napkin. She whispered, "You really forgave me?" I smiled. "Forgiveness don't mean forgettin'. It just means I'm done keepin' score." We ate the pie in quiet peace. The crust was too thick, the filling too sweet, but it tasted like beginning again. And for the first time in years, my daughter called me Mama without flinching. That night, I wrote one last letter to Frank. We did it, baby. We turned hurt into help, hate into home. And that woman you married, she's still standin', still lovin', still learnin'. I sealed it, placed it beside his photo, and blew out the lamp. The moon shone through the magnolia leaves, painting my kitchen in silver. I whispered into the quiet, "This was Aunt Helen, still standin', still lovin', still learnin'.